Los Angeles, California, Long Beach Arena, August 2nd, 1968, Wednesday evening, 7:47 p.m. The arena, filled with 1,200 people, had no idea what was about to happen. No idea what was about to happen. No one knew, except for 5 people. 5 people who had been told to keep quiet. This story would stay hidden for 40 years. Photos erased. Witnesses silenced. But the truth always finds a way to surface. It was the third day of the International Martial Arts Championship, a tournament that had brought together the finest in the world: Shotokan masters, Goju Ryu fighters, Taekwondo champions, Kenpo teachers, and a few outsiders. Everyone was here to prove their style was the best. But the final demonstration, it was going to change everything. There was a new name on the scene, a name that had already caused a stir. A man who called himself Bruce Lee. The Dragon. The man who rejected tradition, who ignored rules, and angered everyone. Marcus Williams, a giant of a man, stood off stage, 6 feet 7 inches, weighing 260 pounds. The crowd whispered, "He's unstoppable. He'll crush anyone who dares challenge him." Marcus wasn't just a martial artist. He was a street fighter, a brawler, a man who had spent his life fighting on the streets of New Orleans. But tonight, he was about to meet someone different. Marcus was ready. He'd faced tough men, big men, men with power, but he had never faced anyone like Bruce Lee. The crowd settled in. The lights dimmed. The air grew thick with anticipation. The announcer's voice rang out, "Ladies and gentlemen, for tonight's final demonstration, please welcome Marcus the Bonebreaker Williams." The crowd erupted in applause. Some cheered, some whispered. But all eyes were on the stage. Marcus stepped out. His massive frame filled the stage. His muscles bulged, his fists like clubs. He cracked his knuckles. The crowd hushed. What was about to happen? Bruce Lee stood in the shadows, his body relaxed, poised. He wasn't worried. He didn't need to prove anything. But he knew. This was going to be interesting. Marcus's voice echoed through the arena. "My kicks beat lightning," he boasted. The crowd laughed. They didn't take him seriously. Not yet. Bruce Lee stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Marcus. "You want to prove that?" he asked, his voice calm. Marcus smirked. "You'll see." He launched a powerful roundhouse kick. The air seemed to tremble as his legs sliced through it, a blur of speed and muscle. But Bruce Lee didn't flinch. He didn't move. His hand shot up, and with a single motion, he blocked the kick. Marcus staggered back, surprised. His kick had been fast, powerful, but Bruce Lee had absorbed it with ease. The crowd gasped. What was happening? Marcus's face twisted in frustration. He had underestimated the man in front of him. Bruce Lee wasn't just fast. He was calm, focused, and his moves were more than just technique. They were a statement. Marcus charged again, but this time Bruce Lee didn't block. He didn't deflect. He dodged. Each time Marcus swung, Bruce Lee stepped aside. His movements were fluid, like water, not even a ripple. The crowd was on edge now. They could see it. Bruce Lee was making a fool of Marcus. Marcus gritted his teeth. He wasn't going to back down. He wasn't going to let this small man show him up. But Bruce Lee wasn't interested in proving a point. He was interested in the fight, in the speed, in the power, and in the control. Marcus tried again. This time his attack was different. He aimed for Bruce Lee's chest, a powerful punch, full of raw strength. But Bruce Lee was faster, a blur. He sidestepped, ducked under the punch, and in a single move, swept Marcus's legs out from under him. Marcus hit the floor with a thud. The crowd went silent. This wasn't just a fight anymore, this was a lesson. Marcus slowly stood up, eyes burning with anger. This wasn't over. He wasn't finished yet. But Bruce Lee stood there, waiting for Marcus to make the next move, to prove he wasn't afraid. The challenge was real now. It was no longer just about technique. It was about survival. Marcus's eyes burned with frustration. He wasn't used to being made a fool. He was the bone breaker, the giant who had crushed every opponent in his path. Now, here he was, on the floor, staring at Bruce Lee, who hadn't even broken a sweat. The crowd was silent, unnerved. They didn't know what to think. What they had just witnessed was nothing like they had expected, nothing like they had ever seen before. Marcus stood up. His body ached from the fall, but his pride hurt more. He glared at Bruce Lee. This time, there would be no hesitation, no underestimation. Bruce Lee didn't move. He didn't speak. He stood there, still as a statue, watching Marcus, waiting. He knew what was coming, but he didn't fear it. He never did. Marcus's fists clenched. He cracked his neck, a loud popping sound echoing in the air. Then, with a growl, he charged again. This time, he wasn't going for finesse. He was going for power. His fists swung like wrecking balls, each punch aimed with deadly intent. Bruce Lee didn't back down. He didn't run. He didn't flinch. He simply moved. A swift sidestep, a quick pivot, and in the blink of an eye, Bruce Lee was behind Marcus. The audience gasped. They couldn't even see the moves. It was too fast, too smooth. Marcus tried to turn, but it was already too late. Bruce Lee's foot swept across the floor, sending Marcus crashing to the ground once more. This time, Marcus didn't get up immediately. He lay there breathing heavily, his chest rising and falling with each breath. The pain was real now. The reality was setting in. Bruce Lee wasn't just a man. He was a force. Marcus clenched his fists, his knuckles white. He had been embarrassed, humiliated in front of everyone, and he couldn't let that stand. The crowd was beginning to murmur again, unsure of what they were seeing. Was this the end? Was Bruce Lee really this good? But Marcus wasn't done. He wouldn't go down like this. Not after everything. Not after the years of training. With a roar, Marcus lunged forward, throwing a wild haymaker aimed at Bruce Lee's head. It was a desperate move, a final attempt to break Bruce's calm. But Bruce Lee was faster. He was always faster. He ducked under Marcus's punch with ease, his body flowing like water. And then, with a quick motion, he jabbed Marcus in the stomach. The blow landed like a thunderclap. The sound of it echoed through the arena. A moment of pure impact. Marcus staggered back, his hands clutching his abdomen. The crowd was on the edge of their seats. What had just happened? Marcus looked up, his vision blurry. His body was giving out, but his mind? His mind refused to accept defeat. He tried again, this time with more intensity. His kicks came faster, more erratic. His body was losing control, but his willpower kept him going. Bruce Lee didn't hesitate. He moved with precision, each step calculated, each move deliberate. It was like he had become one with the fight, one with the moment. Marcus's kicks were wild, but Bruce Lee was always in the right place, always just out of reach. With one swift movement, Bruce Lee dropped low, dodging a kick, and then a flash of light, a blur of motion. Bruce Lee's fist landed square in the center of Marcus's chest. The impact was brutal. The force of it sent Marcus stumbling back, his breath caught in his throat. For the first time, Marcus felt real fear. It wasn't the pain that hurt. It was the realization. This man had power, power that no amount of size or strength could overcome. The crowd was dead silent. They had witnessed something incredible, something that defied logic, defied reason. A man who had spent years honing his craft, now face to face with the truth. Bruce Lee was in a league of his own. Marcus didn't want to admit it. But deep down, he knew. He wasn't just fighting Bruce Lee. He was fighting something else, a philosophy, a mindset, a way of thinking that he had never encountered before. Bruce Lee wasn't just a fighter. He was a new kind of warrior, one who moved with purpose, with clarity, and with a calm that transcended the fight. Marcus stood there, gasping for air. His body trembled, but his pride, it was broken. Bruce Lee stepped forward. His eyes were calm, but there was something else there, something deeper. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Marcus looked at him, the realization slowly creeping in. There was nothing he could do. No amount of strength, no amount of science, could defeat Bruce Lee. The truth hit him like a hammer, and for the first time Marcus had nothing to say. The arena was still, dead silent. For a moment time itself seemed to stop. Marcus Williams, the bone breaker, stood at the center of the stage, his body broken, his spirit defeated. He had faced many fighters, big men, strong men, but nothing had prepared him for this. Nothing had prepared him for Bruce Lee. The crowd, once filled with excitement and expectation, now sat in stunned silence. They couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. The great Marcus Williams had been taken down by someone so much smaller, so much lighter, a man they had all underestimated. Bruce Lee stood calmly, his stance relaxed, his breath steady. He had nothing to prove, nothing to say. He had already said it all with his actions. Marcus took a deep breath. His chest still ached from the force of Bruce's punches. His pride hurt more than his body. He had been made to look like a fool. But this wasn't just about his ego anymore. This was about something much deeper. Marcus had always seen martial arts as a weapon, a way to prove his strength, to dominate, to crush. But Bruce Lee had shown him something else. Bruce Lee's martial arts were different. They weren't just about strength. They weren't about domination. They were about precision, control, flow. Bruce Lee had moved like water. Every action, every step was calculated. His technique wasn't flashy. It wasn't about showing off. It was about efficiency, effectiveness. Marcus's mind raced. What had he missed? What was it that made Bruce Lee so different? The crowd was still murmuring. People were starting to realize what had just happened. Bruce Lee wasn't just faster or stronger. He had mastered the very essence of combat, the physics of it, the timing, the space between movements. Marcus had always relied on his power, his brute strength. He had believed that it was enough. But Bruce Lee had shown him that power, without precision, was meaningless. For the first time in his life, Marcus felt out of control. His body trembled, not from physical pain but from the shock of it all. He had just been humbled by a man half his size. Bruce Lee's calm gaze never wavered. He didn't look down at Marcus. He didn't gloat. He simply waited. He had already proven his point. Finally, Marcus spoke. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Teach me," he said. "I want to learn. I need to know how you did that." Bruce Lee didn't answer immediately. He paused, letting the weight of Marcus's words sink in. This wasn't a simple request. It was an admission, an acceptance. Bruce Lee stepped closer. His voice was quiet but firm. "It's not about size. It's not about strength. It's about understanding. Understanding your body. Understanding your opponent. And understanding the space between you." Marcus nodded slowly. It was like a veil had been lifted from his eyes. Everything he had known, everything he had been taught seemed so limited. Bruce Lee wasn't just a fighter. He was a philosopher, a visionary. And for the first time, Marcus felt a spark of something deeper. It wasn't defeat. It wasn't loss. It was curiosity, a hunger to learn. Bruce Lee turned, ready to walk off the stage. But Marcus stopped him. "Wait," he said. "I want to train with you. I want to understand your philosophy. I want to learn from you." Bruce Lee didn't turn around. He didn't say a word. He simply walked toward the edge of the stage where his jacket was waiting. The crowd was still in shock. Some were applauding. Others were too stunned to move. But it didn't matter. Bruce Lee had already left them behind. As Bruce Lee made his way off the stage, Marcus stood there, motionless. He had come to prove that his power was supreme, but instead, he had learned that true power came from something far deeper. It came from understanding. The fight wasn't over, but for Marcus, it had changed everything. It had shown him that martial arts weren't about force, they were about control. And the real battle was not with your opponent. It was with yourself. Bruce Lee, with his quiet strength and his unyielding discipline, had proven something to Marcus that night. It wasn't just about being the biggest. It wasn't about being the strongest. It was about knowing yourself, and knowing the space between you and the world around you. The crowd was still in awe, but Bruce Lee had already disappeared into the shadows. He didn't need the applause. He didn't need the validation. What he had just done, what he had just shown, was more than enough. Marcus Williams, the bone breaker, stood alone in the center of the stage. His body was bruised, his pride shattered. But his mind? His mind was racing, processing everything that had just happened. It wasn't a defeat. It was an awakening. As he looked around the arena, he saw the faces of the other martial artists. Some were impressed, others were offended, but all were thinking the same thing. What had Bruce Lee done to them? What had he revealed that they hadn't seen before? The tournament director, a man in his 60s with gray hair, stepped onto the stage. His face was a mask of politeness, but there was no hiding the tension in his eyes. He approached Marcus, but for the first time, he didn't offer a hand. Instead, he bowed his head slightly, in respect. "Marcus," the director began, his voice low, "you are a legend in your own right, but what we just saw tonight, that was something different, something new." Marcus didn't respond. He couldn't. He didn't know what to say. The director continued, his voice gaining strength. "Bruce Lee's style. It's not about strength. It's not about size. It's about something else. Something we've all overlooked." Marcus slowly nodded. He was starting to understand. He had spent so many years fighting, but now he saw that fighting wasn't the answer. The real fight was the fight within. The fight to control yourself, your mind, your energy. The director turned to leave, but before he did, he looked back at Marcus. "You've just learned what real martial arts is about," he said quietly. "You've learned that true strength lies in your mind, not in your body." Marcus looked down at his hands. They were big, powerful, deadly. But now, for the first time, he saw them differently. They were just tools. Tools that needed direction. Tools that needed purpose. And there, in the silence of the arena, Marcus made a decision. He wasn't going to be the bone breaker anymore. He wasn't going to fight for ego. He was going to fight for understanding, for mastery. But that would take time. Back in the third row, Bruce Lee had already sat down, his expression unchanged. He had already proven what he needed to prove. He had shown the world that martial arts wasn't about strength. It wasn't about power. It was about adaptability. It was about flow. Bruce Lee didn't need to fight anymore. He had already won. But the legacy he had created, that was just beginning. And Marcus Williams, the bone breaker, the legend who had once been untouchable, he wasn't done yet. His journey had only just begun.